Hi, everyone. Thanks for letting me speak here. Thanks for the invitation. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Laila. I'm based at the University of Innsbruck, and I don't actually work at field-based inference. I work mostly on cosmic shear, particularly higher orders of cosmic shear. And today I want to motivate a little bit why I'm working on that and why this is also a chance to work together with simulation-based inference to improve the robustness of both. So there are three things I want to talk about. First of all, why third-order shear, why cosmic shear in general? How do we analyze third-order shear currently? What are the results that we get from that? And then finally, how could simulation-based inference benefit from third-order shear and the other way around? So we have not heard too much about cosmic shear this week so far. So just a quick recap. The basic idea of cosmic shear is that we're looking at the distorted shapes of faraway galaxies that are distorted due to gravitational lensing by the large-scale structure between us and those galaxies. These distortions are correlated, and by looking at these correlations, we can infer the correlations of large-scale metastructure. And essentially by that, we can probe the entire projected mass distribution between us and those faraway galaxies. And this gives us the statistics of the meta. And the standard tool for that is to look at two-point statistics. So we're looking in particular at the correlations of pairs of galaxies, which gives us the so-called cosmic shear signal. Sometimes put into this is also looking at the projected positions of galaxies in a galaxy clustering analysis or in a cross-correlation between the positions of galaxies and the shear, which gives you galaxy-galaxy lensing. But as you probably know, this does not give us all of the information in the cosmic structure because this is highly non-Gaussian if you're looking at smaller scales. So people are looking at higher order statistics, and there's a plethora of different higher order statistics you can look at. And the one that I'm most interested in is third order shear, where you're looking at triplets of galaxies. So essentially, you're doing the same thing as you're doing for the two-point cosmic shear, but instead of looking at pairs of galaxies, you're looking at triplets. Why do I think this is a good probe? Well, first of all, it's really easy to just extend the standard tool set that you have for two-point statistics to these three-point statistics. That means essentially you can take the same analytic approaches to modeling it, just extend it to the third order, and most of that works perfectly well. And what is also great about those things is that they can really easily be measured, even if you have mass in your data, even if you have different survey systematics. You just essentially do the same thing as you do for two-point statistics to measure the three-point correlation. And we developed some efficient algorithms with which it is not even taking that long to compute those three-point. Usual way we go about that is very similar to how you would go about in a usual cosmic shear analysis. We do our measurements, we do our modeling, we assume a Gaussian likelihood, use a covariance estimate, and from that get our parameter analysis. And all of these things have been explored. Just some examples of papers that have looked at this if you want to have a closer look. And there's a lot of details in all of these things, but I think I'll jump straight to the results. So these are results that you get for KITS 1000, for example, so not the current KITS data release, but the last KITS data release. And these are results that you get for S8 and omega m. The red contours you see over here is the standard analysis using just the second order statistics. And you see that, with the red contours, you get S8 constraints, you get omega m basically not constrained. So this is almost full prior range in omega m. If you're just looking at the blue constraints, these are just the third order statistics on their own. You also cannot constrain omega m. But in this plot over here, you see that there's a nice breaking of the degeneracy direction because both of these contours go into different directions. So if you combine the two, you get this constraint that actually constrains your omega m as well. And with that, you can get S8 and omega m at the same time, just from cosmic shear. In this paper here, the S8 tension was not really solved. It's still about 2 sigma to Planck in this analysis over here. Since then, there's been a couple of other analyses of third order cosmic shear. So these are results from DES and from HSC. And in both of these, you see the same kind of degeneracy breaking effect. So just looking at this panel, this is the omega MS8 panel. Here, the gray contours are the two-point statistics. The green contours are the three-point statistics on their own. And the red one is the combination here. So you see again this degeneracy breaking effect. And here is the same thing just for HSC. So here the red again is the combined. So you see that in the third order, there really is some additional information compared to the usual standard analysis. And well, I said before, KITS 1000, the one that was analyzed before, is not the final data release from KITS. You might have heard that the final data release was just released earlier this year and seemed to have solved the S8 tension in a sense, at least for this data set. So we are also planning on applying the third order statistics to this new data set. These are some forecasts for that. So right now we are trying to analyze which part of the data vector for the third order statistics gives us the most information. And just as an example, we are looking here at the case, we are only looking at equilateral triangles. So essentially you could imagine that you have your triplets of galaxies and you assume that you only take those triangles where the distances are all the same. Or what happens if you also include some unequal triangles, just as an example to see what happens to the constraints. And, well, the constraints improve a lot if you also include unequal triangles, which is not that surprising because essentially you include some more information on the non-Gaussian. But yeah, stay tuned because we are applying it right now to data. So in some time you will get some. Up to this point, you might think, okay, this all seems to work great, but the devil is in the details. And there are some issues here that might need some solution using SPI. So first of all, we have some problems in the modeling with effects that are not easy to model in an analytic way. We have some issues with our covariance estimates, and we have also some issues with our assumption of a Gaussian likelihood. Starting with the modeling, you might know in cosmic shear the usual problems with the modeling are intrinsic alignment, baryonic feedback, and so on. We think we have a bit of a grip on that for the third order statistics because we're essentially extending the toolset from second order statistics. But there are some effects that are worse for third order compared to second order. One of them is the so-called source clustering effect. The issue is you cannot measure your shear everywhere on the sky. You can only measure it where you actually have some galaxies. You only have those galaxies where you also have more matter. That means you're essentially measuring your shear field only at places where you also have a slightly higher shear signal because there's more matter there. It leads to a small bias that is larger for higher order statistics compared to two-point statistics. And the other issue you have is that you never actually measure shear. You always measure the so-called reduced shear. Reduced shear is just a combination of shear and convergence, which in principle you would need to model. Right now, the way we model that is we are looking at simulations and from there get some corrections to our actual model. And these corrections are not actually that small. So in this plot over here, the gray bars show you the half a sigma of the statistical error for the KITS analysis. And the lines always show you the ratio between having the effect and don't having the effect, -1, just to see the relative error in principle. And yeah, I don't know if it's super visible on the slides, but you see that the total effect, which is the red line, can become quite large compared to this half sigma of the statistical error. So it's really, you should not really neglect it. This really can bias the constraints. Also, it's always going in the same direction, which of course is always a problem in your inference. Yeah, but essentially this whole picture of having this analytic model is a bit ruined now because you actually need correction terms from simulation. Anyway, other issues are, well, as I said before, we need our estimate of the covariance. And in principle, for some second and third order statistics, these covariances have been written down. You can just calculate them. For the usual statistics we use, which are for 2-point shear correlation functions and for 3-point something like third order aperture statistics or third order correlation functions, this has not really been calculated to a precision that we want. There are some complicated integrals in there. It's in principle a solved problem. It's just practically not really been done to calculate these cross covariances with all the different terms that play a role there. And because of that, we usually take a covariance from sets of simulations. The issue with that is those simulations are at some cosmology, which is not necessarily the true cosmology. So we need to do some rescaling to the actual cosmology we infer and things like that, which is not, strictly speaking, the correct way to go about it. And, well, finally, There are some hints that the Gaussian likelihood is already not that good of an approximation for two-point statistics. So there's this paper by Max von Wietersheim-Kamser on KITS data, where he did essentially an SPI for second-order statistics and compared that to assuming a Gaussian likelihood and found that this actually makes a difference. And this already indicated that the assumption of a Gaussian likelihood might already not work for second-order statistics. And for third-order and higher-order statistics, this assumption is likely worse. It means this assumption of a Gaussian likelihood might not actually be the right way to go about that. This is currently completely ignored in our analysis. So for all of these points, I'm thinking that the way forward might actually be to not assume this model and likelihood in our analytical form, but infer that from a large simulation. And because I'm not an expert on that, I just compiled down my wish list of what I would need to have to actually be able to do that. And you guys tell me if this is realistic or this is something that we can actually do. Well, it's not enough for me to just have dark matter simulations. They're not enough for me. I really need to have a model of the baryonification because I am looking at small scales and cosmic shear always mixes in small scales. So I really need to have some idea of what the baryons are doing to the distribution. I need to have some model of the intrinsic alignment. This is basically the correlation of the intrinsic shapes of galaxies on their own without any shear at all. This is a major contaminant to cosmic shear, so it really needs to be in the simulations. I need some sort of projection. It can be full ray tracing. Maybe a Born approximation is enough, just the collapse of the matter shells essentially. It depends a bit on the scales that we're looking at, but this is necessary. And then finally, quite important is we need to include survey systematics. That I mean not only the footprint of the survey that you're looking at, but also the shape noise, also the number density of galaxies, and also the variations in this number density across your sky, because you're not observing the same number of galaxies in each direction. Your survey will have varying depth. And this is something that should be included. And best of all, everything in a fast pipeline, so we can quickly sample it and get fast inference here. So I think in all of these points, third order and also second order shear can help a bit though, because it can provide some validation tests. Each of these steps here, in principle, we have analytic models for that, or at least simulation-informed models that we are using for our analysis right now. So each of these steps can be compared between those simulations in the pipeline to what we have in our theory. So we can compare, of course, power and bispectra, but we can compare also the suppressions, we can compare the different intrinsic alignment models we have. So in a sense, the two things can help validate what is happening in the simulation, essentially. And with that, I think the two things can work together. So in conclusion, third-order shear statistics on their own, they are quite robust right now, I think. They have been applied to all stage 3 surveys. They will be applied to further surveys in the future. We basically understand what is going on. There are just some effects that we are not modeling correctly right now and that need to be improved. And this is where SPI can help us by going beyond the assumed likelihood, by having a more robust analysis in a sense. But I think the fact that we have this robust analysis of third-order shear can help us to basically validate potential SPI pipeline, and this validated pipeline can then be used to not just look at summary statistics, look at other summary statistics, or even go beyond summary statistics. With that, thank you very much.